She didn't lose interest overnight. That's the mistake most men make when they try to understand attraction. They think there's a single moment, a text she didn't reply to, a call she ignored, and suddenly they believe something changed. But psychology doesn't work in single moments. It works in slow, invisible shifts that most people never notice until it's too late. And here's the uncomfortable truth. By the time you feel her distance, she has already gone through multiple internal stages you never saw. So the real question is, did she actually lose interest suddenly, or were you just the last one to notice it? In this video, you're going to understand the 4 invisible psychological stages where attraction slowly fades in a woman's mind. Not theories, not guesswork, but patterns based on behavioral psychology, emotional conditioning, and attachment dynamics. Curious? Once you understand this, you'll start recognizing early signals most men completely miss. And more importantly, you'll understand how attraction actually shifts before it disappears. Because research in relationship psychology shows something very consistent. Emotional disconnection is gradual, not sudden. The final behavior is always the last symptom, not the cause. Let's break it down. At the beginning, everything feels warm, responsive, and alive. She laughs at your messages, replies quickly, and shows curiosity. But slowly, something shifts in her internal perception, not her behavior, her interpretation of you. This is where psychological habituation begins. The brain naturally reduces emotional intensity when something becomes predictable. The same conversations, the same tone, the same emotional rhythm, what once felt exciting becomes familiar. You might still be doing everything right, but her emotional system is no longer stimulated the same way. In real life, this looks harmless. She still replies. She still engages. But the depth reduces slightly. The curiosity softens. The key mistake men make here is assuming consistency equals attraction stability. It doesn't. Consistency without emotional contrast becomes background noise. Practical insight. If everything feels smooth for too long, you are not building deeper attraction, you are entering emotional neutrality. And neutrality is always the first step away from desire. Transition. But what happens when neutrality starts to settle deeper into her perception? Now her mind begins a silent evaluation process. She is not consciously sitting and judging you, but her brain is constantly assigning emotional value based on interactions. This is where cognitive reappraisal kicks in. She starts asking internal, unconscious questions like, do I feel excited when I see his name? Do I miss him when he's not around? Is this connection growing or just continuing? And here's the important part. She is not comparing you to other men yet. She is comparing you to the initial emotional state you created. This is where many men unknowingly lose ground by becoming too predictable, too available, or too emotionally steady without tension or contrast. In simple terms, her brain stops upgrading your emotional category. You are no longer new energy. You become existing presence. And existing presence does not trigger anticipation. Practical advice: this is the stage where emotional polarity matters. Not games, not manipulation, but maintaining identity, space, and emotional contrast so you remain dynamic in her perception. Transition. And once value recalibration begins, something very subtle but powerful starts to shift in how she invests. This is the stage most men start to feel confused. She is still around, but her effort changes. Slightly slower replies, less initiation, shorter emotional expression, and the worst part, there is no clear reason. This is where reciprocity principle in psychology plays a role. Human beings naturally match effort over time in relationships. When emotional reward decreases, effort automatically adjusts, not as punishment, but as balance. So she is not pulling away dramatically, she is simply no longer overinvesting. To you it feels sudden, but internally it is logical adjustment. You might notice she no longer asks as many personal questions. She responds, but doesn't expand conversations. She is present, but not emotionally leading. And here's the critical misunderstanding. Most men respond to this stage by increasing effort, more texts, more attention, more availability, but psychology shows this actually accelerates imbalance because it confirms her internal recalibration. He is investing more than I am emotionally invested. Practical insight: effort cannot fix emotional downgrade. Only emotional reset can. Transition: and if nothing shifts at this stage, something more final begins to form internally. Here's something most men don't realize. By the time a woman reaches visible distance, she has usually already gone through all three internal stages. That means what you are reacting to emotionally is already her late phase decision state. So the question is not, why is she acting different now? The real question is, why didn't you notice the earlier shifts when they were still reversible? Think about that for a moment. Stage 4, emotional detachment before physical exit. This is the final invisible stage, and ironically, this is where most men finally start paying attention. At this point, she is still present, but emotionally, she has already exited part of the connection. Attachment theory explains this as deactivation of emotional bonding. The brain reduces emotional attachment to prevent further emotional investment in a connection that no longer feels rewarding. In real life, this is where you feel something is off, but you can't define it clearly. She replies, but without emotional weight. She engages, but without curiosity. She is there, but not emotionally reachable. And here's the hardest truth. At this stage, she is no longer evaluating the relationship. She is evaluating the exit, quietly, internally, without drama. This is why men often describe it as she changed suddenly. But in reality, emotional exit was gradual. It just became visible late. Practical takeaway: when emotional detachment begins, more effort from you does not rebuild attraction. Emotional recalibration does, and that requires stepping back into identity, space, and emotional reset, not chasing presence. Transition: but what does all of this actually mean at a deeper human level? At its core, this is not just about dating or attraction. This is about emotional perception. People don't lose interest in each other suddenly, they lose resonance slowly. Through small moments that don't feel important at the time, a slightly less engaging conversation, a moment of predictability, a lack of emotional contrast, a shift in curiosity that goes unnoticed, and over time, those small moments build a silent emotional story in her mind. Not a dramatic breakup story, but a fading connection story. And the difficult truth is this: most relationships don't end because of one big mistake. They end because of many small emotional disconnects that were never corrected in time. But this is also where awareness changes everything, because once you can see the stages, you are no longer reacting blindly. You are reading emotional shifts in real time, and that changes how you show up completely. If this resonated with you, it probably means you've experienced moments where things felt like they changed without explanation. But now you know, it was never sudden. It was gradual. And I'm curious, have you ever noticed one of these stages too late in a connection? Share your experience in the comments. I read them. And in the next video, we'll break down something even deeper. Why women emotionally test men when attraction starts to feel uncertain, and what it actually reveals about the connection. Because once you understand behavior at this level, you stop guessing and start seeing patterns before they fully form. Until next time, pay attention to what doesn't look obvious yet.